I've come to Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, to see why crime, corruption and politics are preventing the recovery from an earthquake that killed hundreds of thousands. I confront the violence that grips the emergency camps that are the only home for the displaced million.
We're still living in the tent.
And I witness the country stumble towards a crucial presidential election in the midst of an epidemic that could wipe out thousands. On the 12th of January 2010, an earthquake struck Haiti. Over 300,000 people were killed and over 1 million people were left homeless. Billions of dollars in aid were promised to help mend this broken country. However, only a fraction of that has actually arrived. 10 months on, over 1 million people are still homeless, and we're just about to enter the hurricane season. I want to find out what's being done to help this, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, a country that is no stranger to disaster, both man-made and natural. Haiti lies just an hour-and-a-half's flight from the shores of Florida, but it's a world apart. The first thing that strikes you is the huge, sprawling IDP camps, or internally displaced person camps, that were constructed to house the homeless. You know, that's typical of how a lot of the buildings look still. They're not actually totally demolished, they're partially demolished. And there are a lot of people are still living in their homes. We've estimated that around a third to a half are either in IDP camps or they're living in what's left of their home. And a lot of the places they're living in are partially collapsed and are incredibly dangerous. Others, they're completely flat-packed, basically. The top floor went down, the second floor went down, the third floor went down, and what was ever in between those floors was crushed. You see the way that building fell down. I mean, it just collapsed 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. And obviously, well, I don't know for certain, but obviously the child's toy there has not been put there by mistake. And the one thing that you get from standing in a building like this, no matter how long after the event is, it's like time stopped still here. People were going about their everyday Tuesday afternoon routine. At one point they were alive, and within seconds, 300,000 plus were dead. What you find a lot, particularly in the larger buildings that collapsed, are just bones. It looks like a man's legs that are still in the jeans that he was wearing when the earthquake struck, and he's just been left to rot. The people around here have told me that they don't know how many bodies are actually in the rubble that I'm standing on now. No one has any idea. It was late afternoon when the earthquake struck, and many of the public and municipal buildings were crammed with civil servants, medical staff, teachers, and policemen. Inside the presidential palace, as 5 o'clock approached, people were going about their business as usual. This is actual footage of the earthquake that was to kill so many Haitians. Incredibly, only one person inside the presidential palace died. However, outside the palace, it was a different story. The earthquake registered 7 on the Richter scale,
and lasted for 35 seconds. It was a sickening blow for this blighted country.
Immediately after the earthquake struck, the international response was overwhelming. The reason that we've come here is to find out how much has been done subsequently. It literally looks like bombs have been dropped on it. I mean, a considerable amount of TNT has just been dropped on a city. Everywhere I look, I either see IDP camps or destroyed buildings. To the left of me and to the right of me.
For 3 weeks following the earthquake, the heart-wrenching images coming from Haiti made headline news around the world. Millions of ordinary people from every corner of the earth donated money. It was a spontaneous act of global generosity that raised almost $5 billion to help the people of Haiti. The UN chief, Ban Ki-moon, described it as the down payment Haiti needs for wholesale national renewal. However, on the ground, there is growing frustration with the lack of action and the slow pace of development. There are still over 1 million people living in makeshift camps. Eric Klein runs a small independent charity called Can Do. He's showing me around a camp which is recognized as being one of the best in Port-au-Prince.
As you say, things aren't happening very quickly here. 10 months on.
Right. Yeah, it's embarrassing. I mean, it's embarrassing that this is acceptable, that the international community is well aware of what's happening here. And it's embarrassing to be here. I mean, as a white guy, do you know what I mean? This shouldn't be like this. Do you think the people are getting angry? People are getting pissed. That's what's happening in these camps. People are at the point now where they're at their breaking point. Whereas, I mean, and I've got to say, man, Haitians got some serious patience. They have access to television. They know how much money's coming in here. They see it. So they're the same thing. They're saying, why is there nothing coming in here? And you have organizations that have been on the ground in some of these areas for over 30 years. You know, I mean, how hard is it to deliver? I mean, to deliver these results? If you and me walked outside these gates right now and dropped 100K, you would see an immediate impact. Immediately, you could do something with that.
So how would you say the situation is presently in terms of things worse now than after the quake?
Absolutely, I believe so. I believe this is this is the disaster. This is the disaster.
Despite the huge humanitarian effort, as I travel to other temporary camps, I'm shocked at the scale of the problem and the conditions that people still have to live in.
But this is 10 months after the earthquake struck, and there's barely any electricity. In most of the camps, some have none, some have no fresh water. The water they do have, and if you can look down here, this is typical. This is where you're going to get malaria. Look. There's stagnant water laying on here, and you can see the larvae and the mosquitoes bouncing off that water down there right now. Dengue fever is rife on this island anyway. But with so many more people living on top of each other, then the spread of disease just, you know, it transfers quicker. If we think that we're doing enough at the moment to help the people of Haiti, from what I've seen so far, we're not.
You can feel the irritation on the streets because of the lack of action. But I can already see there are many obstacles standing in the way of Haiti's recovery. Getting around this overcrowded, broken city is practically impossible, as we find out why delivering some much-needed fresh water to an outlying part of the city.
There are demolished houses in the way of the trucks, yeah?
Exactly.
There's no way we're going to get through there.
Wow. Here we go. This truck only cost us $60. 60 US.
$60, yeah?
US, yeah.
But where did that money come from?
Donors.
A donor, yeah?
Donor, yeah.
And how much
difference will this water make to the people of Kofu?
Huge, because this is free water.
Are they getting anything like that up there?
No, nothing.
Out of the ruined buildings, people appear with buckets and jostle for the water.
Give me two lines. Daily.
When you just said, I mean, it's a Band-Aid, yeah, but a Band-Aid's better than nothing, right, Eric?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, if we don't come up, we don't get water. It's like, if people want to call it a Band-Aid, yeah, whatever, man.
3,000 gallons of water have now been consumed. The last bit is being squeezed out of the truck, and panic's ensuing now. People are getting hurt. That's how desperate the people are for water.
I can't help wondering that with so many billions of dollars donated and hundreds of NGOs operating in the field, why these people are still so desperate for fresh water. With over 1 million people still living in tents, there's a growing frustration at the pace of Haiti's recovery from last year's earthquake. I've discovered that the demolished and neglected infrastructure explains some of that delay, and now I'm going to see how crime is also hampering the road to recovery. Thousands of dangerous criminals escaped to freedom when the earthquake demolished prison walls. With so many violent criminals on the loose, the UN police have been tasked with tracking the escapees down. We join them on a dawn raid after an informer hands over some vital information.
It's just gone 4 o'clock in the morning. We're with a UN SWAT team that are about to go into an area. They're hoping to be able to encircle and then arrest a number of prisoners who escaped from the main prison in Haiti when the wall fell down in January. The reason we're wearing body armour is that these guys often carry guns.
The police sweep through the entire area, searching for the escaped criminal. At this stage, everyone is a suspect.
We get him.
You got him?
They are securing him, searching and handcuffing now.
This is your man. This is the man they've been after.
Okay, what did I say? I will let you.
Some of the people, obviously, that they've woken up very early are not the people they're looking for, but the guy with the medallion definitely is the main suspect. The judge now is interviewing him in a room, and we're waiting to find out whether the informant can see anybody else who he believes to be a prison escapee.
The suspect is one of thousands of criminal deportees from the United States. The police begin a thorough search. And before long, it uncovers a firearm.
Can I speak to him?
No problem. No problem. You can.
The reason that this team are here is because they're looking for people that allegedly escaped from prison after the earthquake. Do you understand that?
Yes, I understand. But therefore, they're looking for somebody. What you know, Haiti? They find a gun at my house, they're gonna put all kind of things on my head. You already know that. I'm not. There's nothing for me to do down here. My family, none of my family stay here.
So you're actually from the States,
I'm from the state. I'm from Boca Raton. I'm from down. You know why I'm down here? You know I'm down here? I'm down here for a car accident. I got into a car accident. I did 6 years in prison. I got my papers still. All my papers when I went to prison for 6 years. I'm living in a fucked up country. It's all of them motherfuckers. I can say that. They're all greedy motherfuckers. I can't say. I talk. They can't kill me. All of them. They're looking for. I'm telling you straight up. If they know me down here, they know. I'm not looking for trouble. I got my little 38. Yes, I'ma bust me a nigga if you can't fuck with me. I'ma bust you. I'm from the state. Them greedy ass Haitian, all they want is a little couple of $10 from a nigga to eat. This is a hungry country. I'm trying to survive. They look at me down here for. At least say I can talk. I have the right to talk. There's a camera on me.
I have no idea whether the suspect's bravado was a last attempt to wriggle out of serious trouble, or if the police's intelligence was correct or not. The fact that he was illegally in possession of a gun will probably be enough to seal his fate. Nearly half the population of Port-au-Prince now live in huge IDP camps, and they are becoming a haven for crime. Kubel Dubik is one of the few doctors working in this camp of almost 50,000 people. To ensure his safety, he has to donate a percentage of his salary to gangsters who control the camp.
How good is the security for this camp? Because people are very vulnerable here.
La ministère UN Paul et police nationale étaient au dehors du camp. Ils ne savaient pas ce qui se passait en dedans du camp. Il y avait des meurtres. Il y a des meurtres qui se font ici. En mai, on a enregistré dans un même mois près de 4 à 5 meurtres ici. Des meurtres à main à feu. Ils ont décidé de mettre un poste stable ici, là où vous voyez.
That's just one little unpolled police station. Is that really protecting all the people in this camp?
Avant que les Nations Unies viennent ici, il y avait une fille. Une fillette de 10 ans qui a été violée 3 fois.
She was raped 3 times?
Oui, 3 fois.
10 years old?
Oui, de 10 ans.
Were the people responsible for doing the raping, were they ever caught?
Après une semaine, la personne est dans la rue comme tout le monde. Comme tout le monde. C'est comme ça. C'est comme ça.
Most of the crime and violence that happens here is being blamed on the prisoners who escaped from jail during the earthquake.
It's getting dark now. There is one unpolled UN police position, I wouldn't even call it a station, which is just over there somewhere. But, you know, you've got 4 police officers trying to protect a perimeter that has 50,000 people.
The huge camp provides a labyrinth for the escapees to hide. We eventually managed to track down 2 of them. They are willing to talk, but nervous about revealing their identity and getting recaptured by the police.
So you guys are escapees from the prison, is that correct?
Oui.
So why did you go to prison?
Moi, je suis dans la prison moi-même. Peut-être que ça. Peut-être que ça. Moi, je suis obligé de faire des volets pour me faire des actions. Je me fais des dans la tête, petit volet. Petit volet, même là. Bouche par bouche, je vote ça dans la bouche chef. Je vais venir arrêter la caméra vers 2h du matin.
And for that he went to prison, yeah? A lot of people are saying that a lot of the kidnappings and the rapes, particularly of women, is down to the people who escaped from the prisons on the 12th of January this year. Is that true?
Pas qu'à dire, c'est menti. Mais nous-mêmes, là, quand on nous va ça, nous va faire. Nous toujours, ils ont nous propres. Pas voler, pas des gens, pas casser ça même.
Okay, how are you making a living if you're not gone back to crime and there are no jobs? How are you putting food in your stomachs and your family's stomachs?
C'est une belle question. Dans la zone, nous avons chargé de monde qui a boutique qui aide nous. Nous avons des boulons, nous avons manger, on a quitté la canne, nous avons qu'on fait une besoin qu'on fait $100 ou $200.
So aren't you effectively now a gang, back being a gang member?
Non, pas gang. Nous l'avons tué tout le monde la canne, nous.
Okay.
How dangerous is it living here?
En pile. Parce que vous êtes en prison, vous vivez dans l'abri. La police qui arrête, il faut n'importe ça lié.
So you're saying that if you were caught by the police, they wouldn't actually put you to trial, they'd just kill you?
Oui.
The sad fact is that the poverty and crime that imprison people here are interlinked. And without help from the outside world, most people here have little chance of escape.
What do you think about the conditions inside this camp?
The condition inside this camp is not very good.
You're still in the emergency phase, yeah?
We're still on it because we're still living in the tent.
What do you think about the elections coming up? Do you think if there is a new government, they will help you?
For me, it might be worse because if he's...
How could it possibly be worse than this?
It's going to be worse. They never do nothing. If you're going to spend $200,000 in that election, just giving us 20,000 of it to build a school for them. Bring them to school to get some education. Because when he's 15 years old, 16 years old, he's not going to have a gun in his hand to kill people in the street.
If he gets some education. So what's the future? If nobody helps his people, what will happen?
He have to be a revolution. Nothing going to change. The man, soon he get in the palace, he have only one ambition, to become a millionaire, a billionaire, with his friend and his family. He's not going to care about us.
Some demolition work has begun in Haiti, but it's barely scratched the surface of what needs to be done. Sonny Armand worked on the reconstruction of New Orleans, and he's now compiling a report on the situation here for a private contractor.
We've been led to believe that only 2% of the rubble has actually been cleared so far.
They've estimated that there's approximately 90 million cubic meters of debris.
As far as you know right now, how much has actually been shifted?
It's about 500,000 cubic meters. That was as of a couple of weeks ago.
So there you go, you've got 90 million, and actually only 500,000 has actually been moved so far.
That's correct. Incredible. You know, for the first time in decades, you've got the entire world, you know, behind the Haitian people, wanting to help them recover from this terrible tragedy. I mean, you've got a presidential election coming up in November. You know, perhaps that's part of the delay. The president that's going out is essentially a lame duck, and perhaps he doesn't want to make those hard decisions, or he wants to pass them on and let the new president make them. Whoever is in charge, they need to make the tough decisions. And one of those...
Unpopular decisions.
Yes, politically unpopular. But otherwise, we might as well go home. Because all of the aid that's been promised by the United States, the European Union, Canada, Asia, you know, the Middle East, all of those funds that have been promised are going to go to providing food and water to people who live in tents. You know, and that wasn't the idea.
The world donated billions for Haiti's recovery, but lack of infrastructure and planning are stopping progress.
You know, in a perverse way, this earthquake could be the best thing that's happened to Haiti. If the money arrives, and if it's used properly, then they could rebuild this town and could rebuild this country.
The next hurdle in Haiti's recovery is the imminent election to replace René Préval, the current president. As a result, decision-making has ground to a halt while politicians fight to get their hands on the reins of power. The political vacuum seems to be preventing the NGOs from being as effective as they would like to be. I want to speak to someone who has an overall view on what the non-government organisations are doing in Haiti. So I'm meeting up with Leonard Doyle from the International Organisation for Migration. Part of his role is to coordinate the hundreds of NGOs working on the ground.
I mean, many accusations in the newspapers, particularly in the West, that a lot of money has been wasted, particularly money that was promised hasn't actually turned up. Is there any truth in that?
The money hasn't showed up. That is true. That is true. It hasn't showed up yet because they're having trouble getting the project sorted out. They want to do it right. They want to do it better. They don't just want to throw money at something that washes away in the next rainstorm. But they have water, they have sanitation, they have access to healthcare.
But do they all have that? Because we've been to IDP camps where they're complaining that they haven't got all those things.
No, they don't all.
And if they have it, there isn't enough of it.
They don't all have it, certainly to the level that they should have it. And there's a race against time to build what they call transitional shelters, which are hard structures instead of these flimsy, pathetically flimsy shelters, because one flick of the tail of a cyclone and they're gone. This is a country that you're seeing 40, 50 years of misrule.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a dominant neighbor.
And corruption.
Corruption, human rights violations like you wouldn't believe. Dead bodies in the streets. Anybody who was offside is dead.
So how do we get from that to what's going on in these camps? Well, we've heard accusations from people we've met in IDP camps that simply not enough's being done, that a lot of things were promised and they just haven't materialised.
Well, people say things were promised, but with the best will in the world, things get muddled up. They've received a vast amount of humanitarian aid. There's definitely big issues of violence. There's lots of gender-based violence, especially in a place like this with no lights, no electricity. But to say that the humanitarian organisations, the NGOs, haven't done their job, I think is wrong. I think they have done their job. What's happened, though, is it's blocked. Because where do they go? OK, they've been tented for 6, 9, now 10 months. They can't stay here forever.
Do you think there is ultimately a plan?
I think there is, yeah. I think there's you know...
What is it? Because there doesn't seem to be one.
I think it's slow in the making, but they're definitely... One thing the Haitian government is determined to do is to build it back in a way that it's not a slum. And that whatever they do it to a certain standard and they build a community back. Now, the trouble is it's in the middle of an election cycle. It's hard to do that. It's hard to be effective. It is also true that 40% of the government was wiped out, killed. They lost their ministries. So, I mean, they've had a rough time. And as we said, it's the legacy of tougher times. So I think they're going to get out of it. The Haitians are an incredibly resilient people, and hopefully they'll get back on the right track.
Most of the displaced persons camps survived the hurricane season. But in late October 2010, everyone's worst fears were realised when an outbreak of cholera was confirmed. To make matters worse, this particular strain of the killer disease was thought by many to have been brought into the country by the UN troops. As the death toll rose and the outbreak spread, violence against the UN broke out all over the country. Cholera is spread by raw sewage getting into the water supply. To the victims, the source of this disease is of little importance.
So far, conservative estimate is that some 1,600 people have already died due to the cholera. However, the UN believe that some 500,000 people will be infected before the outbreak is over.
We've managed to secure access to the team on the front line fighting this lethal outbreak. We're joining them as they patrol the city, picking up and disposing of diseased bodies.
There are 2 units like this operating in Port-au-Prince, and they're working 24/7 collecting bodies. What these guys are saying is that they're getting phone calls from people telling them when people are dying, and they're being able to get there very quickly, pick the body up, disinfect it, and get it out of the area. What they have to do is basically, they have to disinfect the body because it's still contagious, even though it's dead. Also, I've been told they fill in all the orifices on your body because they believe that the bacterium can leak out of it after you're dead. But the worst thing, really, is this is an IDP camp and people live in such close proximity to each other. And the massive fear is that, you know, there's been isolated outbreaks in IDP camps. But if this cholera was to grab hold of one of these camps, thousands and thousands and thousands of people could die.
Hey, les gars avec complot. Avancez, avancez les gars complot.
And this is on the edge of the camp where we've just picked up a 30-year-old male died of cholera. Burning rubbish down here. And you look at the colour of the water. And unfortunately, people are washing in that and boiling it up to drink it. And, you know, often they're not boiling it sufficiently before they use it for cooking, and actually some people are just washing in it. At the moment, it seems to be the poor that are suffering more at the hands of this disease because they're the people who can't afford the fresh drinking water. They have no access to proper sanitation. And also, they're the ones that are unable to read some of the messages and the leaflets that are being sent out warning people how to prevent getting the disease. We've arrived at where the body collecting team suspects a second body is. However, it's some way up there. And it underlines the fact that once you fall prey to the disease, you really have 4 hours maximum to get somewhere where you can be treated, which obviously presents problems if you're very, very young or if you're very, very old. But, you know, also, people here are so paranoid about the disease and coming into contact with it that a lot of people are not prepared to give someone a lift to the nearest hospital if they fall victim to the disease.
The combination of poor sanitation, ignorance, and shattered water and sewage pipes is providing the perfect breeding ground for this deadly bacteria.
The thing about cholera is it doesn't discriminate where it affects people in terms of, you know, we've been down in an IDP camp today with these guys. We're now up, right high up on the side of one of the mountains here. And it goes to show, I mean, you know, it's so widespread now across Port-au-Prince. I have no idea how it spread from one area to another area that quickly, but it has. This again, it explains why people die so quickly of the disease here, because there is no way, if you were ill and had no help, that you could get down or up this hill in 4 hours and get to somewhere who could help you. Body's here. We're spraying it now. The whole room.
Acute diarrhea quickly dehydrates the victim, and if it's not treated within a few hours, death follows quickly. The tragedy of this death, and the hundreds of thousands that cholera claims every year, is that they are all avoidable. And it's a disgrace that so many die globally because they have no access to basic health care and clean drinking water.
She woke up, she said she wasn't feeling good, so she went to the bathroom.
To deal diarrhea, yeah? Diarrhea. She was ill at 4 o'clock and she was dead by 10 o'clock. Yeah. I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm very sorry. There's now an argument going on between the son, the woman who's just died. He doesn't want the body to go. They want to hold on to the body. They want to mourn the body. That's a massive problem because the longer those people stay around that infected body, the more chance there is that the disease spreading. Well, the locals here, they want the body gone, and they're arguing with the man that's in charge of the body collectors now to convince or make the son release the body.
With cholera escalating, the last thing this country needs is large groups of people congregating and possibly transferring this deadly disease.
Okay, this is Sunday morning, day of the election. The only vehicles on the road are either UN vehicles, occasional press vehicle, and other than that, it's people walking to polling booths. But even though it's already very early, we've heard complaints that many people haven't been able to find polling booths in their constituencies, and they're angry about it.
The polls put the government-backed candidate Jude Celestine neck and neck with former First Lady Madame Manigan. Just behind in third place is Michael Martelli, commonly known as Sweet Mickey.
Manica, look at this. Let's get out, let's get out, let's get out, let's get out, let's get out. So this is the candidate, Sweet Mickey. He's actually presently lying third in the polls. He's very popular with a lot of the younger people, a lot of the working class people.
Martelly président les gens. Si Martelly va président, il a changé.
But basically, what those guys are saying is that they live in a place called Petronville. In Petronville, the people here predominantly support Sweet Mickey. However, in Petronville, there are no places for them to go and vote. And what they're also saying is that if Jude Celestine does get into power, they will set Petronville on fire. Please to the left.
We failed to find any polling stations here, so we set off to see for ourselves how the election is going in the rest of the city.
What we've been told is that other polling stations have had to be closed because the computer that assesses votes and the registration for votes has broken down. And the rumour is that those polling stations and that computer broke on purpose and were closed on purpose to stop people voting against the candidate the government wants to win.
Madame Maniga arrives at the polling station and immediately calls a press conference.
Jodia te doué yon gros fête civique ou fête nationale côté citoyen pays d'Haïti pral choisi dirigeant lieu. Mais depuis 5 heures du matin, m'a recevoir coup de téléphone un peu partout. Gen radio qui a relayé d'ailleurs témoignages de monde tout côté dans le pays où il y a parlé de fraude massive qu'a organisée.
Absolute scrum in there, obviously. I have to say, very badly organised considering this is the front runner. The one thing that she did say, or I could glean my bad French, is that she's saying that ballot papers have been rigged, that there have been voting irregularities, and the election has already been fixed.
This election is costing the international community $29 million. But as we tour the city, we discover that it's rapidly descending into chaos.
What you've got over there are people trying to find their names. A lot of people here, their names aren't up there. Some of the lists have been ripped down, yeah, they've been destroyed.
I got my card with me.
Yes.
I don't even see my name up there.
Right.
But that's
so you're registered to vote, but because your name is not up there won't be a ballot paper for you to sign.
Lycée National de Pétionville. My name is not up there. That's Preval. It's good on that one.
And that's Preval. You're saying that the present administration is stopping you from voting because they know that you will vote for a candidate that they do not wish to become president.
You got it right.
What do you think of Jude Celestine?
As the day goes on, people start to spill out onto the streets in protest, declaring that the election is a fix. Even one-time presidential candidate and ex-Fuji star Wycliffe is having trouble finding his name on the voting register.
Have you been able to find your name on a register to enable you to vote?
No, and we're staying here right now. We're making phone calls to understand why our name is not on the list.
Right.
And if they say to us that, well, this borough do not have your list, you know, your registration list, I will drive to every voting borough today until I find my name on the list.
4:30 in the afternoon, a number of the candidates have called for the election to be scrapped. They're saying, these guys in particular are chanting one thing, that they were paid to vote for Jude Celestine, the government-backed runner, and they've taken his money, but they want to vote for Sweet Mickey. Basically what they're seeing is that Jude gave them money, the government gave them money, however, they're voting for Mickey.
The day ends in chaos, confusion, rumour and accusation. The whole validity of the election is now in question. In the days that follow, the people's frustration turns to violence as the ruling administration clings to power. This election promised change and the opportunity to kickstart Haiti's reconstruction. But like so many other promises made here, it failed to deliver. When I first came to this country, I believed that with the right support and investment, Haiti's recovery from the earthquake would be relatively straightforward. But my time here has shown me that this country's problems are far more complex than I could ever have imagined.
Haiti, quite simply, is a country on its knees. The international community promised some $12 billion to help rebuild Haiti. So far, only a small fraction of that money has actually turned up. And what has turned up is being used literally to keep people alive. Haiti has a history of corrupt governments and natural disasters. And now it's faced with a cholera epidemic that has already killed over 2,000 people. The poor here simply live from minute to minute and die by the hour. But the most tragic thing for me is quite simply this: there seems to be no long-term plan for the future of Haiti. And while there is no plan, there really is no future for the people here.